Please, Kevin. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 23rd, 2024 school board meeting, Portsmouth School Board meeting. Welcome, everyone. Hope you had a successful New Hampshire primary day today. So exciting for the state that we're #1 in the nation. Anyway, we will find out later what happened. Okay, let's have the roll call.
Scott Hops,
Present.
Liz Barrett,
Here, by Zoom at home and per the new policy. I'm at One Freedom Circle and my son is in the other room.
Pip Clues, Tish Campbell,
Here.
Carrie Nolte,
Here.
Brian French,
Here.
Nancy Clayberg,
Here.
Lisa Rappaport,
Here.
Lee Hudson,
Here.
Brian Matto,
Here.
Danielle Miles, and Nathan Delaney.
Here.
I'm sorry, Paula, I think I'm supposed to also add like why I'm not there, and I'm not there tonight because I actually lost my hearing with an ear infection. So it's easier to turn the volume up in here than it is to ask you guys all to scream at me. So thank you.
Feel better, Liz.
Thank you.
I'd like to welcome Scott Hops to our meeting tonight. Scott is our SAU 50 representative from
Greenland.
Greenland.
I was about to say New Hampshire and that was. Yeah.
Okay, why don't we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Do we have any announcements or recognitions? The only thing I have is, we get the weekly announcements from all the schools. And the paper clip, I think this was was that the first edition that came out that we just got on the website? So it's the newspaper for the high schools. And I mean, remember when you were in high school, it was like a newspaper. Well, this is a very, very sophisticated online social media event, and it's awesome. So if you have a chance, I think, are the new people getting all the announcements from the different schools? Okay. So if you have a chance, look at that particularly. I was very impressed. A lot of hard work goes into that, correct, Nathan?
Yeah, a lot of hours.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was unbelievable. Award-winning, I would say. Okay, now any other announcements that anyone has? Okay. Let's go to the consent agenda. We have 3 sets of minutes. We can approve all in one fell swoop unless people have adjustments they want to make to any of them. The first one is the January 9th organizational meeting. The second one is the January 9th regular meeting. And the third one is the January 16th workshop session, budget workshop session. Do we have a motion to approve all 3?
I have actually a question on the organizational one.
Okay, why don't we approve? Are there any questions on any of the other 2?
Yes, yes, Nancy.
I just clarify the process, especially for new members. So we didn't talk about this the last time. And if people already know this, I apologize, but consent agenda is a mechanism where allows us to accelerate past things that might pass kind of pro forma and save us some time. When you have consent agenda items, typically the way in which they'll be designed is it will request particular action. So in this case, approval of minutes. Any one member for any reason can pull something out of the consent agenda and say, I'd like to have that separately considered. So, just in case we didn't talk about that at our orientation and we didn't talk about it at the last meeting, we only had the 1 set of minutes. And this is not exclusive to minutes. It can be, and it can include other things, again, as a mechanism to accelerate things. So.
Okay,
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda and accept the consent agenda. The whole, and then if people want to.
okay. Okay, do we have a second for that? Wait a minute, I guess I'm not understanding what you're saying. We know we want to pull out the first one.
Okay.
So do we want a motion for just the second 2?
Typically I think it works as a consent agenda, has a motion, and then there is a proposal to pull something out, which is what I was attempting to do.
Okay, so we have a first. Do we have a second? Okay, Byron. discussion, you want to pull out the first one?
Yes,
Yeah.
you're,
Okay. Liz, what would you like to do?
So as far as discussion goes, my computer's going a little slow right now, but I think it's on page,
Wait a minute, wait. We didn't get that far yet. We're
okay,
We're just deciding on the acceptance that we're gonna pull out the first one. Do we vote on the second two first and then go back to the first one, correct?
I think, can we just vote on all of them separately?
Do you have a question on the second or the third set of minutes?
Yes, Nancy.
Is there, so I think it's, so
All right, why don't we do each one separately?
Probably.
Okay, let's have a motion not to do what we agreed to before. Do we have a motion to rescind that?
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, and will the second withdraw?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to the organizational meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
so moved.
Brian,
Motion to approve.
what did she say?
Second.
Okay, second. Okay, discussion on the organizational meeting. Tish, did you want to discuss?
I did want to discuss something. When I read it, the only thing I noticed was on the nomination for the vice chair. It only, in the minutes, it only mentioned Brian. It left off Lisa's nomination for that.
Okay, so can we amend those minutes to say that Brian was nominated and Lisa was also?
Yes,
Okay,
and I've got.
And you've
I've-
got that
I've-
noted?
I've got notes, I've got it noted, I've got notes about who made that motion and
okay,
so we'll get that amended.
okay, all right. Okay, can we approve any other discussion on this first set of minutes? All those in favor?
I need a roll call, Nancy, because I'm at home.
Go ahead.
Tish
Matt.
Campbell,
Approve.
Carrie Nolte,
No.
Brian French,
We want to vote down the first one, don't we, and amend the second one?
Yeah, no, so my suggestion would be to not approve this. I think it's a substantial change to the minutes, and I think they should come back to us at a later, only because it's a big difference. But that would be my suggestion. So that is why I was voting no.
I'm gonna vote yes.
Brian French, yes. Nancy Claiberg,
Yes,
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Lee Hudson,
Yes.
Byron Matto,
No.
5-2, yes.
Terry, thank
I
you.
didn't vote.
Sorry, Liz Barrett,
Yes.
thank you, 6-2. This is what happens when we go out of order. My fault, sorry.
We're trying something new where, Liz, listen to this. We're not gonna start with you every time because it's kind of not fair to have you have to vote first every single time. So we're alternating how we vote, okay?
All right. Whatever's easier. I mean, I don't care going first.
Okay. All right, let's have a motion to approve the January 9th regular meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Carrie. Do we have a second?
Second.
Tish, Brian, whatever you want to put down, Nathan. Any discussion on the January 9th set of minutes?
Nancy?
Yes, Liz.
Okay, so on the January 9th set of minutes, sorry, my computer's going a little slow. Can you hear me okay, though?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I think it starts on page 2. Hold on, January 9th. Sorry, I'm trying to get there. Okay, so I'm looking at page 3. I'm sorry, there's. I don't know if it's on the next one because there's 3 sets of minutes here. It might have been the next one, but can you come back to me on this one, Nancy? I'm sorry.
Okay, let's table this second set of minutes for a minute. And do we have a motion to approve the third set of minutes, which is January 16th?
I think we need to.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Nancy. Actually, the third set's the small one. This is the one that has the issues.
Well, can you find it? You kind of hold.
Yeah, I can. I'm sorry. There's talk about ESSER funds, and I'm just trying to find the page, but instead of saying ESSER funds, it says Esther funds, ESTER, and escrow funds. I thought it was on page 2, but now I'm having a hard time finding
Is that in the that in the 16th meeting or the 9th meeting?
the 16th meeting's the short meeting minutes, right?
It's in the 9th. I just found it. Page 2.
Okay, yeah, there's ESSER funds and then escrow funds, and then on page 3, KM, Zach McLaughlin starts getting referred to as Kyle McLaughlin, and then KM throughout is Zach McLaughlin. And then
You can you hold on, Liz? Nathan?
Yeah.
Can you clarify where it is for me? I'm sorry.
The Esther part,
Yeah.
page 2. It's
On the 9th, correct?
on the 9th, yes. C. Section C under Liz's thing. She said
Okay.
Esther. Yeah.
Okay, can we correct that? On page 2, section C. I don't see where
C.
it says ESSER.
No, C.
It said instead of
Esther.
Esther.
It should be
funds.
ESSER
Okay,
funds.
all right, can we make that correction?
it also says escrow somewhere. I can't find it either right now. I had written it down earlier, but I didn't write the page number.
Correction to
Yep.
be under escrow funds.
Yep.
And then a correction in
Oh, I
C. ESSER.
Okay, it should be.
Yeah, and then it starts on page 3 under mine, I believe. On page 3, number 4, mine, it says on sentence 2, Kyle McLaughlin.
Okay,
And
that,
then after that, Zach's referred to as KM throughout this whole document after that time.
okay, so we'll make those 3 corrections.
And
Esther,
then I also have another one on page 4. There is, on page 4, number 12, under mine, it says something, also, can we have some discussion about how we're contracting positions and where would these convos take place? What I had asked was about how we were structuring schools. If we could ever have a conversation about how we structure schools. So that's inaccurate. I mean, you could see Zach's response is about the structuring of the redistricting process and the structuring of schools. And his name is still KM throughout. So I mean, I think I would go with Carrie on this one. I think this needs to change substantially with Zach's initials and some of these edits. And I guess I also was wondering from Zach, why are these like this? I know we're contracting somebody to do it, but is there somebody could Paulette review these afterwards just to be sure stuff like that makes sense? I don't, it just doesn't make sense to me why this was put in the packet and nobody noticed
No, I appreciate
that before.
I appreciate the concern, Liz, and I think we can do a more thorough review before it comes to packet next time.
Thank you.
do board members want to vote to approve these with the changes proposed?
Yes, could we just be specific on the change? So the change in 12 on page 4 is how we're
Restructuring.
restructuring
Okay,
positions.
yep.
Okay. Is that,
No, it's not restructuring positions. I had never said anything about positions. I was talking about how we were structuring our schools and having a conversation around, potentially structuring our schools in a different way like other schools have. I think we need to have a serious conversation about it and where that would take place. You can see Zach's response. So
Yeah.
if Zach's response could be
I
summarized.
just want the wording clarified. So
Okay, let me make a suggestion. We will review this and come back to it at our next meeting. We need to rewrite that. We're not going to rewrite it here. It takes too much time. So let's table these minutes.
We'll do a review, including the items that were pointed out, and we'll return and we'll make sure we can demonstrate where the adjustments have been made. So people can see those as well.
Okay, so do we have, the original motion was to approve the minutes. So we have to vote on that motion, correct?
May I ask a question before we do that?
Yes.
So when we've had questions about the minutes in the past, we've had somebody check the tape. Since there's it sounds like a solid number, can we just see them and strike through when they come back? Just so we can see the changes and we don't have to re-debate what changes were made. You see what I'm saying? Like if you edit the minutes and you change the wording somewhere, if you can just make
That's
that in
what I
red
think
so we can
yeah, that's
see
what I was
it,
trying
so
to
we
say.
don't have
That's
it.
what I was trying to say
That's
before,
all,
like,
yeah.
just in terms of
Yep.
tracking changes.
Yep.
Would be a,
Perfect.
give me a draft where you.
Make
Just so we don't have to
see
next
the-
time sit
you
here and
see
be
the
like,
track change.
Okay.
Yeah.
A motion to table.
Right, okay, we have a motion to table, do we have a second?
second.
All in favor, oh, roll call, please, and we'll start with, Kerry this. time.
Carrie.
Yes.
Nolte. Brian French. Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport. Lee Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Matto.
Yes.
Elizabeth Warren. Yes, sorry.
Who's absent, and Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Okay, passes to table.
Okay, we will table that and discuss it again at this meeting. Okay, the third set of minutes, which is January 16th, do we have a motion to approve this set of minutes?
So moved.
Brian, second.
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 Thank you, Byron, Brian and Byron. Do we have any discussion on the January 16th minutes? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Starting with Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Lee Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Matto.
Yes.
Liz Barrett.
Yes,
Pip Blues absent. Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, we're on to the public comment, for in-person and remote. The public comment session is any person can speak for 3 minutes. We need to have their name and address, before they speak. I don't see anyone here in the room. Do we have anyone on Zoom?
We do not.
No, we don't have anyone on Zoom. Okay, we have the public comment session closed. Okay, now we have a public hearing on our budget. Again, people can get up and speak, name and address. Do we have anyone that would like to get up and speak about the budget? No one here in the room. Do we have anyone on Zoom? No. Okay, we will declare the public hearing on the FY 25 budget closed. I guess I'm supposed to do this. Okay, we'll go to the superintendent's report. Zach, you're on.
Okay, a couple of I had briefly included an update on lead testing and remediation. A couple things that I can give you since that has occurred. In it, I referenced the fact that we had received back the, if you will recall from my memo from our previous conversation, we were in the second round of testing over three sets of testing that we're going to do over multiple years as part of the state's process of starting to adjust the parts per billion lead count from 15 down to 5. So we did the second round. We conducted the second round. The first round of this happened in 2019. The second round we conducted in August of this past year. But our methodology, we had concerns about, we got back some results that were higher than what we anticipated. And then as we examined the way in which we went about the process, realized that our methodology was not the correct methodology in terms of our sample draws. We then on December 16th did a second round of samples. In the interim, once we get back our results from the state, we took all the state steps that were necessary from the state, which were to shut down all the water outlets. This includes drinking fountains and sinks that could be used for consumption. We shut those down and started our process of remediating. So we had to develop a remediation plan for the state that's been submitted to the state. I included just the screenshots of what was submitted to the state around the water outlets that had higher than a 5 parts per billion reading on those August samples, which again, we were concerned were not the most accurate set because of the way we took the samples. We have had a public commitment since then, even when we're going to do the second round of testing, that we were going to remediate regardless of which set of tests we're bringing back lead levels that we would remediate. Even if we had got lower levels on the December tests with the correct methodology. And so we've gone through that second round. And so we did see a significant drop in the number of outlets that tested over 5 parts per billion. We went from 35 across the district in our initial testing of 149 outlets down to 11 So there were some problems in methodology that led to some of the outcomes that we saw. But we are continuing to work on remediating across the board. And again, what we are pursuing is not just 5 parts per billion, which is what the new state expectation is. But we are trying to pursue, we're going to remediate all outlets that have any parts per billion that register at the level at which the instrument they use can detect them. Now, what will be interesting, I think there will eventually be a decision point, because what we're doing is we are utilizing 2 different filtration products at each of these different outlets. What will be interesting is after we remediate with filtration products, after we switch out faucets, if we are below 5 parts per billion, but we are at 1 part per billion, there'll be some discussions that we'll need to have, because we will have done things, we'll have done most of the stuff that we can do that doesn't require us to start, getting into walls and reworking piping, all that type of stuff that could lead to some, higher costs, but also just logistical issues in terms of some of the things we're trying to do in schools. We're not there yet, but I just know that we'll, eventually I'll keep coming back to you with, here's the latest update, here's where we're at. Just be aware that that is something on the horizon that we might need to contemplate. But we will not leave anything above the 5 parts per billion level. That's not going to happen at all. I think it's just going to be a matter of how deep are we going to go in the pursuit of no readings at all. So. And then the other thing, since I put out my memo, the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services went live with their grant applications that are available for some of the remediation costs. Those remediation costs are only for things that we're trying to fix that are above the 5 parts per billion. So if we go for lower standard, some of the things that we will apply for will potentially be eligible for state reimbursement, as long as we're getting in there quicker and ahead of everybody else. The things that we do where we're remediating something that is bringing back a reading, but it's already below the 5 parts per billion level, will not be eligible for reimbursement from the state. Again, that's not going to stop us from pursuing those lower numbers. So.
Thank you, Zach. Do we have any questions for Zach? Thank you. You're
Okay.
working hard to stay on top of
It
it.
was a surprise. I mean, when we got it, it was a surprise. So it's taken up some time, but Ken Lynchy and his crew are doing a great job, and the state's been very helpful. So.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is the school board email summary, which we all have in our packet. So we'll.
And I can just tell you quickly on that, one of the emails was in relation to the coordinator and whether or not that role was going to continue. The proposal, the budget proposal you have does continue that role. And that was from the parents, the Booster group for the
Music club.
Yeah, music club. There's a student who reached out to us about headshots for the new members, and I directed that student to we now have up-to-date headshots for all of our new board members online. And there was one other person who had a request around calendar stuff, and that you'll have some of that conversation. Not specifically, I'll mention what that person was looking for, but we are looking at for the first time the draft of the calendar tonight. And so I'll make sure I mention the email when we get to that part.
Okay. Any questions to Zach? Okay, let's move on to, there's a letter of resignation.
Yep, this is from Britt Santa Maria, who's a former second grade teacher from Little Harbor, who's been on leave. And if just letting you know that she does not have the intent to return. You don't need to take any action on this. This is just for informational purposes.
Okay. Any questions on that from anyone? We wish her good luck. Next, we have the financial report.
The financial report was in your packet. I tried to call out in the memo a couple of things that had changed. I took a look at the notes that I was including and threw an asterisk in where there was any adjustment in the projection, and those are reflected in the memo. Continues to be not a lot of news right now, I think. Things are continuing as we expect. I think if I called your attention to Substitutes in salary category is over budget. I expect that that will end up measurably more in deficit. We've seen that in the last few years, growing worse and worse. Of course, we're paying our subs more and more. And so that's a predictable trend. There's about $126,000 of adjustment to increase lines of substitutes throughout the budget that are included in the proposed budget. That doesn't stem the tide necessarily, but it moves us in the right direction gradually. Guess that's it that I'd highlight. Any questions? I certainly would do my best.
I have a question.
Lisa had her hand up first. Liz, you're second.
I did have a question, Nathan, about the substitutes, and I feel like we talked about this previously, because I think maybe Little Harbor and maybe one other school had a position that was sort of a floater to cover for leaves in some of these situations. And I just wondered if there's a tipping point where we might consider that as being more cost effective or just generally more effective for teaching than having the shortages of subs that we're dealing with. Like, I don't know what the number is where that would even make sense.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess what I would say to you is that right now we don't have any other districts I've worked in called permanent subs or floaters, building subs. At the high school, we have someone who owns responsibility for substitutes. And that person is essentially full-time, is there every day, fills in when there are vacancies that can't be filled otherwise, coordinates on those times when we have multiple substitute needs but can't meet them, and so we congregate students in cafeteria or some, he's involved in that. So that exists at the high school. That's really, I think, it's about two things. It's about the mass numbers that are being dealt with, and the fact that there's some administrative role there. I don't mean administrator, I mean making the phone calls, making sure that we are scheduling and coordinating. I haven't seen that in the other schools, to my knowledge. There's nobody. There might be some really consistent subs, but there's nobody who's on payroll as a permanent benefits, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there definitely is, maybe not a tipping point when we could find savings in that, but certainly an opportunity that exists when we could find more consistency of service, because when you can offer a real permanent gig to somebody, you're more likely to be able to secure that, and that can't satisfy all of the sub needs in any given day, but it can stem some of the punch on days when you end up with more absences than you might have expected. We haven't done that yet. You want to comment?
Yeah, I would say, I like that model. I don't, it won't solve. I don't think it solves the volume of need. But it does, I mean, I've worked in buildings where, that person is, they're there every day. And there's always a need, and they're the first person up, and they become they just become another person who's part of your building culture, they're part of additional capacity. So there's value. It's not a cost savings value. You end up paying benefits and whatnot, but there's operational value that's a value add for sure. And if that's something that the board would entertain, we haven't formally had that conversation with principals. I want to make sure, but just as an approach, I like it as an approach. And I don't know how much more, it would cost us additional chunks of benefits, because in most buildings, there are people who informally have become kind of like, they're like the number one or number two person that everybody wants when there's a substitute role anyways. I think there's a certain amount of that kind of informally occurring already. But I think there would be potential value add, maybe at small money to do it. So it's a good suggestion.
Thank you, Lisa. Liz, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to follow up about these balance remainings and what that means for the future. I also wanted to ask about the balance remaining for the out of district tuition of 720,000. I know there's an encumbrance there, but then there's a balance remaining. So does that mean that those funds are going to be left over? And I also wondered about the unused overtime. Is that just we're budgeting for overtime and it's not being used? And so I guess I'm wondering, with the request for us to cut the budget this next season of, the next school year, what will happen with the current budget overages? I mean, not overages, but if we're going under budget and we have leftover funds, what could we do with those and how does that work?
I would say before you hit the details, I would say broadly, I think tomorrow is an important meeting for the city council because the manager will be going to city council, the brief city council on kind of an overview of the budget, and we'll be looking for some feedback from the council. And I think that when the manager came to talk to us, I think she had presented as such. She was going to go to us. She was going to each of the commissions, the police and fire, to talk about the same thing, but this was all prior to having a conversation with the city council. And then the city council would give some additional some marching orders that may or may not reflect what the manager told us. So I would just say that the tomorrow becomes a really important meeting. I know I will be there just in the peanut gallery. I don't know if Nathan will be there.
Definitely.
And we'll see what comes out of that conversation at the city council, whether that adjusts the dialogue that we initially had with the manager. But Nathan, if you want to speak to those individual items, that would.
Yeah, so let me make sure that this, I think it's a great question. Everybody could probably benefit. So we have for a number of years been using a plan-based financial that contemplated what we had spent, like a spend pattern, if you will. What we had spent on average at this moment over the last 5 years. And if reflecting that percentage against the current budget, what should we have spent at this point in the year? The reason that I think that Portsmouth was using that was because we didn't do a really good job of encumbering things. And in my experience, schools work on a spectrum. Some of them encumber everything, and you have a balance meaning of 0 on day 1. Welcome aboard. It's July 5th. We're already at 0 because everything we budgeted for, we expect to spend, and we then reduce our encumbrance as we actually spend and increase our expenditures. And the math shows 0 remaining all year long. I'm working, and I said this in the memo for a while, I'm working on our efforts to be more accurate with our encumbrances. The single biggest concern in encumbering funds. So encumbering funds is obligating. If I hire somebody and they're worth $50,000 plus taxes and retirement and health insurance and dental insurance, I can go in and commit the 50 plus all of those other calculated amounts. And on the first day of the year, none of them have been spent. So my expenses are 0, my encumbrances are full. As I pay them, my expenses climb and my encumbrances should go down. And at the end of the cycle, all of the money is in expenditure and the encumbrances are 0. If I've done that to an extreme, I know at some point, maybe about now, I would hope, about now as we're talking about the new budget for next year, I'd be able to tell you we'll have $50,000 left over at the end of the year. Because unless something happens like we blow up a boiler and got to replace that, and that's an expenditure not in the model, generally the encumbrances hold the place of predicted expenditures. We're not good at that yet. I'm still doubting and challenging and working on the encumbrances of payroll for all 400 plus people. And there's not normally an encumbrance for things like substitutes. You do that based on a spending trend. You look back over multiple years, you say, wow, we always seem to have folks go out a little bit more over the holidays. So right now, the substitutes are a preliminary estimate. And I just said a second ago, I think that will go over. I'm working to tie up the dollars in the salaries to make sure that that's more accurate. But if you look back beyond the first page at other areas, those are consumption items. Those are discretionary lines, the operating budget. That's where we're buying pens and pencils and books and paper and computers, et cetera. And generally, we only encumber those as we issue a purchase order and go buy them. Our model here has not been to encumber the full amount of what the John Darrow Elementary School has to spend and then chip away. We encumber as a part of our approval process. So you'll see if you look on the top of the second page that the schools have a combined 300,000 of balance remaining. They will spend, if I were to guess right now, I'd say that when it's all done, that category will leave 25,000 on the table. Maybe not, it might be more like $10,000 or $12,000, but they will spend the majority of that over the course of the next 6 months. One of the things that we had as a problem with the former reporting was everything was chalked up to timing, because if if we diverted or if we, if we didn't spend on the exact same pattern we had in the last couple of years, the financials could look really twisted because things ought to be something according to the trend. But for instance, in the area of special ed out of district tuitions, the staff have been identifying and doing annual payments. They pay up front. They find discounts for paying the tuition for the year. We have contractual agreements that say if the child stops attending, we get reimbursed, but they take advantage of those discounts up front. That looks weird in a timing perspective because normally you pay month by month. This year, we're actually paying a lot of it up front. So I tried to get rid of that timing issue by using a more traditional model. What you'll see is that some of these areas will have balances later into the year. And in the area specifically of out-of-district tuition, the encumbrance is a limited encumbrance based on some elements. I fully expect that we'll overrun that budget. There won't be $700,000 left over by the time we're done. Right now, my rough numbers would say we'd be over budget by about $300,000 in that category. So, but right now, the special ed office hasn't fully encumbered by writing a contract or writing a purchase order for every expenditure for every student that they are committed to out of district. And that's just that's a training and behavior, effort to try to indoctrinate folks in the way that we want to approach that. So in answer to your question, Liz, I don't think that we're going to overspend the bottom line. I think there will be some dollars left over. I don't think it's going to be huge because I think between subs and out of district tuitions and Kenny's area of maintenance and buildings and grounds traditionally goes over budget. We'll find some savings in our salaries for positions that are vacant, and we'll find some savings in energy because I think we might be doing better than projected this cycle. And those will help offset some of the shortfalls, and generally the bottom line will be positive, but not huge. What's that?
Just to be clear though, Nathan, if at the end of the budget cycle, if there's money left over, does that money go back to the city and then we're starting with our budget for the next season, or cycle, or are we able to credit that towards the next cycle, to show the city, okay, we had some cost savings on this budget.
It's a great question, but it's a zero-sum game. So at the end of the year, I will tell you that Portsmouth traditionally finds a way to spend all of its money, and very close. I mean, I think I've laughed a couple of times and said the last couple of years before I arrived, Mr. Bartlett managed to get the fund balance or the operating leftover down to less than $1,000 on 50-something million. So I haven't been quite as good at spending to the last penny that way. But whatever we don't spend, we can't keep it. It does go back into the city's pool to help fund the following year. And then we get whatever our new budget was as approved by the council.
I guess I'm just a little bit concerned with that, because if our budget is, it's great that we have money left over, but then, obviously there's probably plenty of things we could spend it on, but I think, that needs to be directed by our budget. And so I'm a little bit concerned with the notion that, okay, we have, 200,000 left over and we're going to find somewhere to put it without, having, taking credit for that in our next budget cycle or running it by the school board. So I'd like to sort of see how that plays out this year and maybe keep an eye on it if we could. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Carrie.
My question is regarding peanuts in this budget, but as we're moving into a new phase with strategic planning, I just wanted to check in on the very small overspend on the school board budget, which included strategic planning. And if we have a ballpark of where we can, and it may be better to discuss in the later part of the strategic planning process, but I know that there's been discussion of whether those groups that will be convened will be led by Great Schools Partnership or led by, and so I just wanted to pull that into this conversation, seeing that there was a little overspend there.
So the quick version is we extended the contract with Great Schools Partnership at a $0 just to complete the project.
Yep.
So, and they looked at the timeline, we looked at the timeline, and we came to an agreement. They were willing to extend the timeline out to the end of this year, because we were originally going to be done sooner than that. And they did that at zero cost to us. Now, what, I think there's not an intention in that though, that our consultant would get every one of these meetings. Will be part of the original kind of convening and getting them rolling and then be available, periodically. To be part of those things, but Leah would not be attending every single one. So, and like I said, and they are with us through the end of the school year for no additional cost.
So we're not anticipating additional costs within
Not
that.
through the not through the GSP program.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Nathan and Zach about budget? Nathan, I was hoping that overage in the school board section was a raise for all of us.
Yeah,
So, listen, I want you to know, I went looking, because this question was asked, and
I'm kidding.
no, but it's somebody, there were a couple of people that asked, and I'm not sure they're in the room right now, but there was, the question that was asked was about rate change, and there was a suggestion the council had made one, so that the stipend that you get as school board members is prescribed by charter, and it would take a charter amendment to change it. And that was done some years back, I think, with the council. But because I said it'd be very small money to make a slight adjustment here in the budget, but the charter doesn't support that. So we certainly could, at some point in the future, talk about what that charter amendment might look like. I'm quite sure that, like everything else, it would be decided by the 9 counselors. And so it's not like we'd have to go out and do a big vote, public, citywide. And so I think there's something there that we could pursue, and it's probably worth doing. But as it stands, things are flat in the budget for next year.
Maybe this isn't the year to do it, considering our budget is very, very tight. So we'll think about that in the future. Okay, that was just a little joke. Now we'll move on to consideration, old business, consideration and approval of policies, second reading. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, just in terms of, I was gonna frame process for new members, really quickly, just in general. So our process for approving policies, we have our standing rules and orders, and Rule 21 speaks to how we pass policy. Just read it really quickly. It's very short, just a couple of sentences. Each policy shall pass through the following stages. There will be a first reading for information. If the first reading is passed, the board shall move the draft policy forward to a second reading at a future board meeting. A policy would pass with an affirmative vote after the second reading. A policy, and this is important because this is something that we had some discussion about, a policy may be amended by the board at any stage of this process. So if you're in the second reading, which we'd be in tonight, it's okay if you make an adjustment inside of this second conversation. It would not have to go back to a, we'll call it third reading. So these policies that are in the packet tonight were all ones that received a first reading on December 12th, as our exiting policy committee chair, Margot Budati, brought a whole bunch of stuff for consideration as her swan song on the mail to her parting gift to all of us. And so these were ones that that night we had eliminated a bunch and sent to, she had a long set that was a single read to eliminate policies. Those did not appear tonight. 2 of the ones that were originally proposed from that list were then sent to policy committee, which does not exist prior to tonight. The new policy committee membership will be determined this evening. And then there were several others, these ones that appear here from section B, which is around the board governance, that received their first reading on the 12th, and then this would be the second reading. So an affirmative conclusion to these tonight would then make these policy. So.
And we can vote on these in a bundle if we so choose. Does anyone, well, let's have a motion to approve them all at one time.
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I guess we have to have a roll call vote.
It's, I have a discussion.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, discussion. Actually, I would like to pull one out.
So
Okay,
there you go.
I want to pull out BBAA, the second one.
I was gonna suggest that
We
maybe
do
we have
that.
it for different reasons. I don't know, but
Oh, okay.
but I'm watching the and going back my notes, I think there was a specific request of the policy committee to take a look at, Matt, you,
At BBAA.
Liz has her hand up.
oh, all right. There was a specific request of the policy committee on BAAA. Lisa had led a discussion around talking about board members reporting back from committees to the board in a more formalized way. So I had, because there was no policy committee, I took a crack at some language. So I don't know if that's what you were looking at with BA.
Okay, shall we vote on all of them except BBAA first? Why don't we do that? Okay.
Discussion.
Are there any, is there any discussion on all the other policies except BBAA? Lisa?
I have a question, so I don't necessarily need to pull it out, but I just have a question about, okay, I'm not gonna get the number, but it's on the policy development, BGAA. Okay, and your list, and so it's maybe just a question for Zach, because I know the policy committee was reviewing how to make things kind of flow better.
Yep.
We had talked about having sort of documents that would go out to the board as part of the policy review with the strike through. And I know that's not detailed in here, and I'm not saying that it should be, but is the intention to continue that? Because it's really helpful.
Yeah, the same, just to be clear, just to make sure, same as what we,
Okay.
same as what we're doing, right? Like where you get,
Okay.
you got a markup,
Number,
you
okay.
have a markup copy?
Yep.
Yeah, that would be my intent,
Got
that I always want you to be able to see what we have, where we're going. In the proposed language.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay, Liz?
Yes, a couple comments on the policies. I think Nancy, for procedural purposes, you probably should make a motion to amend to pull the BBAA out, but that's your call. BDB, the second policy or the third policy in the packet, BDB. Are we all there? It doesn't talk about Nathan or Patty, so I guess my question is should we include Nathan and Patty? Because I mean, it does talk about the superintendent is an ex officio non-voting member of the board. Should we also include Nathan and Patty on that as well, or is there a reason to intentionally not include them?
Do you have an opinion on that?
I can verify, I think the relationship between the superintendent and the board is part of statute. And the statute doesn't the statute doesn't assume that school districts have either an assistant superintendent or a business administrator. Those are optional choices that come from, but in statute, you gotta have a school board and you have to have somebody who you're gonna hire to run your schools. Outside of that,
It's up to you.
it's semi up to me.
Yeah, so I guess the only thing that I would see wrong with that would be if Patty were to step in your place, or you weren't to be here, or she were to speak on some things that, you know, would generally be a superintendent's role to speak on, which I know Patty generally does. She's also keeping some minutes and she's keeping tally of votes. So if, you know, sorry, Nathan, but you know, maybe we can keep Nathan out, but I think maybe we should include Patty in this section. So the superintendent and assistant superintendent for that purpose. So I don't know what would be best practice here, if we should make an amendment like Nancy's to pull this out separately and, you know, table this and get back to it, or if we could vote on it and get back, you know, for the first round and then have it come back.
What do we
for
have
a separate-
right now? If others agree with you, then we'll table it. How do others feel about this? Should we pull it out or should we leave it up to Zach to decide who goes to our meetings from his staff? Yes, Kelly. Carrie.
I think that it falls to the superintendent to decide who's there in his supervision, but if the business administrator was unable to bring a budget report, it would be the responsibility of the superintendent. And similarly, if Patty was unable to fulfill her role, it would be on Zach to make sure that role is fulfilled. So I'm comfortable with how that is. I mean, the only kind of compromise piece I could see would be putting in language that just says that the superintendent may direct or invite other members, non-voting members from the administration or something like that. But I don't think the position itself should be specified.
Byron,
Yeah, I would agree with what Carrie's saying. I don't think there's any other positions here. I think it's the superintendent position, and to her point, you know, he can assign whoever in his stead and those sorts of things. And I wouldn't even go so far as we need to specify that. I think that's relatively implied.
so leave it the way it is.
That would be my yeah.
Others agree? Do others agree? Okay, then let's just keep it the way it is. Thank you, Liz, for your comment.
I got, Nancy, I have a couple more on BEC and BGAA. On BEC, we're talking about non-public meetings. Sorry, let me scroll to that. So BEC is talking about non-public, and I know that this is what we've had previously because it's obviously we're striking through a bunch of other stuff. But I guess I'm wondering, this says that after non-public sessions, any decisions made must be recorded and made available for public inspection promptly. But do we need to have something that negates decisions about teachers? Like, for example, if we were to have a non-public session about a teaching dispute or some contractual dispute, anything like that, like, are those teachers, you know, is the decision of the board public information, or is that only information for that teacher?
It's my understanding that if it's an employee situation, that is confidential and it is kept confidential.
Okay, so I guess I'm wondering if maybe we need to include something to speak to that.
We can, so my understanding is a little bit different. So, and Nathan is a former chair, too, with Patty and your experience with other places, but if, let's say we go to a hearing to hear a grievance from a employee. The employee has the option of making the hearing private, or let's say we're having a conversation about whether or not we're terminating the employee has a right to have that be a closed session for that process. In terms of the vote, again, I'll lean on both of my colleagues in New Hampshire. The vote itself to take action to terminate employees' contract would have to be done in public session.
Sorry, Zach, can you talk into the mic a little bit? You said it would have to come, what?
So the actual vote, let's say, like, you know, the most uncomfortable of these in terms of the reputation of the employee would be an employee who is the board votes to terminate. My understanding, although we can confirm, is that the actual hearing itself, the employee has the option in the hearing with the board for that to be in a non-public session. So the hearing itself at employee request could be a private closed session. At the conclusion of that hearing, if the board ultimately decided to take action that would terminate an employee's contract, this would be, like, let's say it's a teacher, and the board's going to take action to end their contract earlier than, you know, the end of the school year or whenever it would naturally run out, that you would have to take that vote in public session. And it would name the person who is being terminated. And that would all have to be in the, you know, transparent to the public. Now in some cases, what leads to sometimes cases where employees who think they're on the verge of termination may decide to resign prior to that situation because they would prefer not to be in that spot. But that's my understanding, but I'll lean on my two colleagues who've been in positions in New Hampshire.
Well, I guess I'm wondering about like grievances too. Like, are we not, like, if a grievance comes forward, are we not making I mean, is the board not making a decision within a grievance hearing, even if it doesn't require termination or whatnot, even if it's just answering a question? This policy, the way that I read it, would say any member of the public could go to the superintendent's office the next day and say, I want to know what that meeting was about. And those decisions would need to be made public. So I guess I'm wondering if it would make sense to have some sort of caveat in here. To negate the need for public record of decisions regarding employment.
So Liz, and to everybody, I would say 91A is pretty specific and detailed in terms of
Yep.
what can be discussed in non-public session versus public session. Our best practice is always to adjourn from non-public session. In your minutes that I take for your non-publics, I always use the language, no action was taken, no decisions made, because you use the opportunity to discuss things outside of the public's eye that legally can be discussed outside the public's eye, but you come back to public session in order to cast the vote. And we record that vote in public session, specifically when there are employee hearings or grievances and things decided. Those are provided for as well, but by the same method that, by the same token that when you meet with your lawyer, it's not a non-public meeting, it's a non-meeting. And when you meet to discuss collective bargaining negotiations and what you're going to do when you face the union, that's a non-meeting for very specified purpose that the statute allows. I would be really careful to take this language that is lifted from 91A and make any changes, because I think the reason that you were cutting off the rest of it is because it was attempting to restate certain elements of 91A, but then we don't keep up with changes in the statute or other things that should be added or deleted. So I think that is, it's trying to be very succinct and make reference to 91A and then leave it there because there's so much in the law.
I was gonna say that, and that was the intent. The
Yeah.
intent was just make sure we are connected to 91A, that there's an awareness of 91A, and then eliminate an incomplete, what is already an incomplete list. Because people could assume it is a complete list.
And I go one step further and say that if there was something that required a vote in a non-public session because of a contractual, like you're buying something or negotiating to buy land or something like that, or if it were something that dealt with a student record or an employee thing that was of such grave significance, you can seal minutes. I've never seen you do that in the time that I've been here, because we just haven't had those circumstances, but there, again, in 91A, there are mechanisms for you to seal them, and then there are rules about how they stay sealed and when they're revisited, et cetera, et cetera. So I think everything that reasonably might come up is addressed in the law.
All right, thank you. I also have a question about BGAA. On BGAA, it looks like the only change is the strike on and the city attorney's office. And I guess I'm wondering why we're doing that. I know that the city attorney's office isn't there every single time, but it says with the assistance of, and so I would hesitate to take out attorney from.
I need to have you stop for a minute. There's another comment about the policy.
Yeah, I thought I was just getting my questions out of the way and then I can move on here.
Hold on for a second.
I'm
Terry,
I'm curious, Zach, on because it throughout our policies, there's these parenthesis references to statute.
Yep.
And the prior had, for further clarification, please refer to, I guess I just wonder about taking that piece out.
Mhm.
Because I think there is benefit to me in having something of like in compliance with RSA, blah, 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 or something to that effect.
I mean,
Byron, did you want to say something?
sorry, yes, I fully hear what you're saying. I mean, it does reference in the parentheses, in the, that, non-public one that you're talking about. I don't know mechanically if we call it specifically that like it inherits and like gets all properties from that particular statute, if that's necessary. But, so to me, the way this reads is that it necessarily inherits those things. Yeah,
So you're satisfied with the way it stands?
yeah, I
Okay.
read this as inheriting from the statute, yeah, the art, yes, yeah.
Okay, do others agree with that? Should we leave it the way it is? Okay, thank you for the suggestion, but yes, Byron.
I have just a question on some of the formatting here. Is there any rhyme or reason to the blue versus red in some of these?
Can you give me an example, Byron?
So the BDF Policy Advisory Committee is got a bunch of strike
This is
through
my
and stuff.
phone blue.
and it's blue, and the other ones are, I don't, and the other
No,
ones, some.
no, it's not
Okay.
intentional.
Okay, thank
We'll
you.
try to be consistent. We're not trying to send you a secret message.
Multiple
Cool
people.
on the blue stuff. And,
Yeah,
yeah, no, and we'll try to be consistent, but it doesn't, the color in that case.
thank you.
Oh,
Okay.
those are different colors?
Okay. Liz, did you have another does anybody have another question on another one? Liz, I know
Yeah,
you.
BGAA.
Okay, good.
On BGA, I briefly said it, I don't know if you heard on BGAA, the only strike through I'm seeing is and the city attorney's office. And it says with the assistance of, I know the city attorney's office isn't going to be present at every policy meeting. I'm just a little hesitant to take away the need for having an attorney review or work with or offer assistance. I know that they're obviously there, but I think we should keep it within the policy that they are offering assistance. Are we just not what was the reasoning for eliminating that? Are we not using the city attorney at all, just private attorney? And if so, why don't we put attorney in there versus city attorney if we're using private attorney?
I think Margot talked about this at the meeting on the 12th, and the actual concept behind it was two things. One, Portsmouth over time had evolved because we had a unique situation with a particular attorney here in the city who was a half-time employee who was fully committed to work with the school district.
Zach, I'm
That-
sorry, can you move your mic down a little bit?
So so we had a unique setup where Kathleen Dwyer, who was a half-time attorney here in the city's legal office, was basically given to the school department to take care of school-related issues. And that was a combination of special ed related issues, some court-based stuff, and some policy. What was unique, I think, compared to other places I've been, is that Kathleen actually chaired the meetings of the policy committee while she was in that role. We have since, there's been a restructuring within the legal department, and right now we did not fill the role of an educational attorney in the legal department, and instead we are contracting out that work with Wadley Star out of Manchester. So when we were having the conversation at with the members of the policy committee around this, the idea was that this reference to the city attorney was really a reference to an old practice that really focused on Kathleen's role, and that Kathleen's no longer here, and that role doesn't exist in the same way. And that there's a number of different things that the policy committee and then my office would draw on to get information to be in a position to have informed policy. That would include reaching out to attorneys, whether it's in the city legal department, the people that we've contracted in connection with educational law, and of course the NHSBA model policies that we receive are all vetted by their attorneys as well. So the idea was we were not going to limit the scope of the sets of people that we were going to refer to, and that we were going to consult with in order to develop good policy and make sure it was legal. And that we weren't pigeonholed into making sure that we always had to check with a city attorney who right now really isn't serving in that capacity in terms of helping us around these types of issues.
I have a,
Yes, Tish.
Nancy, can I just follow up on that question though? I appreciate that, Zach. I guess my only concern though is that these policies are, designed by the school board, for the superintendent, for the school department. And so I guess I'm just a little bit hesitant to completely eliminate attorney. I can understand not being pigeonholed to have them there all the time, but I think that we should have something in there that requires some consultation with an attorney if necessary, especially with all these different laws and whatnot changing and updating. And
If you look at line 15, it said the board's policy committee with the advice and counsel of the superintendent and the city attorney's office. So we do have the city attorney's office in the policy. So it's probably not necessary to repeat it in line 33. We have it in line 15. And I believe that's adequate. Let's see what others think.
Okay.
Lisa, Tish was first, I'm sorry.
The only thing I was thinking where you striked off and the city attorney, and I understand why struck, thank you, struck off that
Strike.
line. But could you put in there, with the assistance of the superintendent and legal consult or something like that, because you are getting any legal advice from a different variety of places. That way you're not locked into one particular place. But it is known that, yes, we are getting legal advice for our policies.
And I would just say one, just to clarify, just about existing practice. If we have a policy from the School Boards Association, we don't. And we're basically following that policy, like, we're pretty darn close
Mhm.
within a few words. We have traditionally not sent that back out to some other legal counsel for a secondary
Because
review.
it's already been through that
Already
legal
been through that
process.
process. That's what we pay our dues for, the New Hampshire
Yeah.
School Boards
Okay.
Association. So, so we could do that, but that would, I think, assume that I'm sending out somewhere, whether it's city legal or it's this contracted legal service. And then
Okay,
it's just a matter of how long does it take for it to come back to us.
all right, that makes sense to just off that line to take it off then. With not adding legal advice in there.
You could do, sorry.
All right, wait a second.
Sorry.
Lisa is first. Sorry, Byron, you're next.
Okay, well, this was just a quick question, kind of following on what Tish said, but in some places, so for example, on line 16, we reference the city attorney's office in that section. And then in the next section, we talk about in line 20, legal counsel. And my suggestion would just be to potentially change all of those references to legal counsel, if that's the intention, because otherwise it seems like maybe we're picking in different places, different people to be involved. And if it's legal counsel, it could be the city, but it doesn't have to be.
I think the intent was, we probably just missed it in the process.
Well, that could be a copy edit, I think.
Yeah,
It just
I think
be
our
consistent
intent
with
was just to be,
process.
like, in places where it says. for the
Yeah,
most part, where it says city attorney, because we used to have our own person.
right.
and that
So
doesn't happen. To just have it be more generic in terms of there is a legal professional somehow.
So if our intention is legal counsel, I would just suggest maybe just doing a find and replace in there.
I actually like the legal professional term better because that would also cover what the New Hampshire School Board process does.
Good point.
So you would call it legal professional.
Professional is exactly what Zach said, legal professional.
Okay, so we want to change line 16 to say advice and counsel of the superintendent and legal professionals. Legal professionals?
Legal counsel would be my suggestion.
What now? What
But
is,
then the legal counsel might not cover the New Hampshire School Board, which goes through their own process, but we've gone through them and trusted on their legal
Legal
team.
counsel.
Attorney though,
They do.
yeah.
So I think.
Legal
as long as
counsel
people
is okay.
understood That legal counsel could be
legal?
indirect. You know,
Okay,
we're not the direct client of that
Mm.
particular person, as long as that's understood. I mean, there's gonna be times where we will do some double checking, but I'll tell you, in terms of pace.
What about legal review? Because that would cover what goes through the New Hampshire School Board Association.
Byron had, oh,
True.
okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Let's see what Byron has to say
Yeah.
about what you just said.
I was just
Okay,
gonna add, you could just append with as needed, so you can just be a little more ad hoc with this, when you wouldn't need to.
wait a minute, say that again.
Yep.
You just append with as needed after legal professionals or counsel or whatever the verbiage there is. And so that way, in cases where you're just like taking verbatim from the school board association, there's no intent in this policy that you would necessarily use that thing. Yeah,
Okay, so we'll say legal counsel as needed?
Mhm.
Yes. Is that okay, Tish?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Carrie,
I just wanted to move us along and kind of move towards a vote on these if there's no further discussion.
okay,
So the motion would be to approve 1, 3, 4, 5. So removal of 2
right.
and vote on the others
And that's what the motion.
with
on
the
table is.
modifications to
BG.
BGAA.
Okay,
And since
All right.
Tish was your original second, are you okay
Yes.
with the way she's restated that?
Yes.
Okay,
okay.
Thank you.
but Zach has something to say.
Well, what was the change we made to BG?
Legal
Legal counsel as needed.
Okay, so
Can I call it out? What I've written down is that on line 15 and 16,
Yes.
the board's policy committee with the advice and counsel of the superintendent and legal counsel as needed.
That's what I have. Is that okay?
In line 20, superintendent, 19 and 20, the superintendent or their designee in consultation with legal counsel as needed shall prepare. And then I guess, thank you for asking the question. Am I doing that to line 33 and 4? The policy committee with the assistance of the superintendent and legal counsel as needed. Will review and research.
Yes,
that works.
that's
And
what I,
then I'll tell them to do it at all 3 places.
okay. Are we all set?
What
Nathan,
Nathan said.
what does Nathan say?
So the first one that you brought up, Nancy, BBAA, I know you had something to say, Dr. Lott, was it
Yes.
just the same thing? All right.
Well, no,
We pulled that out.
Same thing.
Oh, we just pulled it out. Okay.
Yeah, we have to
Okay.
discuss that
That's what I
separately.
was trying to figure out.
Okay.
Right, so we're gonna vote on all of them except number 2. Roll call vote.
Starting this time with Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Lee Hudson,
Yes.
Byron Maddow,
Yes.
Liz Barrett,
Yes.
Chip Clues, absent, Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Carrie Nolte,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Approved.
Okay, now we move on to the one that I pulled up, but I think you pulled it out too.
I will let you-
BBAA. The line 22, committee assignments will be made by the chairperson with board approval. I would like to take out the board approval. I
I'll
don't,
second that motion. Is that a motion, Nancy?
all right, yes,
I'll second that motion.
Liz. In my experience over 24 years, we've never had the board approve committee assignments. And I think the reason is I think it could get pretty chaotic. Let's say John Smith raises his hand. I don't want to be on the policy committee and you put me on the policy. You know what I mean? I think it could get very chaotic. I will tell you, Brian and I sat down a week ago Sunday. We had all of the requests that all the board members made. We came up with the assignments. We tried to, give people what they had requested. It's not always possible because you can only have 2 people on this committee, 1 person on that committee. So I would like to take that out. It was not in this policy previously. And I think it came out of a template from somewhere, is the way it was explained to me. So I would like to have that withdrawn. Lisa,
Yeah, I don't think that that's a problem. It's there because the NHSBA, it's in their model policy and a lot of other school boards do it that way, but I don't think I don't object to removing it.
okay. Byron,
My only question is, later in the agenda, we have the approval, don't we, of the?
no, it just says committee
Oh,
assignments.
just committee sets.
We're not gonna approve
Okay,
it.
okay,
Left it
fine.
in.
Okay, right, I'm all set, thank you.
Good point, though. Byron, oh, let me do Kerry first. And then it's Liz. Okay, Kerry first, Liz, then it's your turn.
I understand the rationale and the work and time and energy that is painful that you guys have put into this. As someone who has been placed on committees that board members have disagreed with, I think it's actually really kind of changed the process. And my specific example is the strategic planning committee. There was just kind of some dissatisfaction with my appointment to that group. And in that way, I would actually have preferred that came to the board so that we could be unified and people would acknowledge me as the representative and bring concerns to me and do that. So I actually would be in favor of keeping it in and seeing how that goes over time. But I could go either way on it. I just wanted to put that as we come together and try to move forward, that like this was a board decision and we move on with a board decision as opposed to rehashing it again and again.
Anyone else have an opinion? Thank you, Kerry.
Nancy?
Yes.
I guess I'm sorry?
It's your turn.
Yes, I thought you said Pip. I guess I'm just wondering from the policy committee, because I wasn't there for this and I'm no longer on policy. Obviously Pip's not there today, Margot's no longer on the board, so I don't know if Zach, if you can speak to this, but you have 91A2, 91A2A, and then you have the New Hampshire Code of Administrative Rules, Section Ed 303.01. Does any of those reference the need for board approval of committee assignments?
No,
I don't know.
I know 91A, let's say, I'm more confident that 91A2 and 91A2A don't. I'm a little less confident on what is in 303 .01, but I think that what Lisa said before is correct, is that the reason why the language appears this time out is that it was in the New Hampshire School Board Association's model policy. But I don't think it is connected to a rule at the state level that requires us to take this approach.
Okay, I'm just gonna read it real quick because I think that it's important that we approve our policies tonight and figure out what we're going to do on this, because we need to move forward with our committee assignments so that the policy committee can meet and these other committees can meet. But I would hesitate, even though I made the motion with Nancy, I'm hesitant because I want to be sure that this isn't some sort of requirement. I don't see anything right now in 303 .01, and I would suggest my other school board members take a look at that just to be sure through Google search. So with that said, I do think that Nancy, I do agree with Nancy that I think it could be cumbersome for us to vote through all these different committee assignments and approve them. I feel like that's almost taking away the need, the ability of the chair. I mean, it's the chair's ability and their role as chair. They have very few things that they can do. They can help control the agenda and they can pick committee assignments. If you think about, chairs and traditionally in government. But I mean, with that said, we also do approve what teachers we hire, but that's part of our sort of budget role, I would say. So I think it's the chair's duty and responsibility and sort of the gift of being a chair to be able to appoint committee assignments. Do I always agree with what the chair does? No, but I think that's why we picked out the chair to be who she is today and going forward, with the consideration that the chair is picking your committee assignments.
Okay, Liz, thank you. I have Carrie and then Lisa.
I just needed clarification around what we're discussing right now. So is there a motion to approve BBAA, or was this already going back to policy?
Sounds
No.
like there was a motion.
I wrote it down as a motion
Okay.
to amend it, to approve it with this amendment.
A motion to approve with amendment.
Mhm.
And then the amendment is
To take out.
to
with
take
board
out with
approval.
board approval.
Correct.
Okay, then I'd just like to vote.
Okay, well, wait a minute. Lisa has a comment. Oh, and
I-
Zach has
yeah.
another amendment to it, so, or another change to it, whatever. Go ahead, Lisa.
Well, I don't want to cut off Zach, because my question was going to be, can we send it back to policy and vote on the other ones and keep going?
We already did.
No,
vote
I
on
know,
the
I
other
mean, we
ones.
have a lot of other, yeah,
Okay.
but
Well, we're trying not to send things back to the policy committee. That's one thing we're trying not to do, just to relieve the burden of the policy committee. But Zach, what were you gonna say?
And
But
I'd say
thank
the
you.
ra- and
Lisa.
I'd just say the rationale is so we get gummed up. So what happens
Sure.
is we have like hey, here's what we're hoping to hit this calendar year. And the volume of stuff that's been coming back. And I think Kathleen used to be a big supporter of this. She's like, oh, you can just amend at the meeting, and to get it done and move on. If Kathleen's at home watching this, I hope she's not offended by my voice version of Kathleen.
So let's move the
So I
motion.
would say the other amended piece.
Oh, that's right.
Which I
Give it.
wanted to reflect because at the last meeting, like I said, Lisa led a discussion around this idea of reporting back. And we do have a rule that talks about board committees and when they would report back in terms of their minutes and stuff. So I had a draft two sentences that would, I think, fill what the discussion was last time, which was about this desire, and it would be, I think it's line 21.
Yes.
22. Line 21 ends with, board members may occasionally serve on committees or organizations for the purpose of reciprocal communication, reporting back to the board. The amendment would read, my suggested amendment, and I can't suggest it because I'm a non-voting ex officio. Board members will submit written reports to the superintendent's office for inclusion in the school board agenda packet. For school district, so there's a difference between the types of committees we're talking about. For school district standing committees, city committees, and temporary slash special committees. This will include a written summary of the committee's activities, and decisions. For school board standing and ad hoc committees, this will be composed of the committee's minutes with a cover page.
Is that in our rules of order? I'm just looking here. I thought that was in our
One,
rules.
in the rules talk about, Rule 19 says standing committees and ad hoc committees of the board shall establish meeting dates and times, shall take minutes for each meeting held, and shall make the minutes available to the public within 72 hours. The minutes shall be presented to the full board as part of a written report for information purposes. But it doesn't speak to the other types of committees that we, so it just talks about standing and ad hoc. And not the other, so I separated mine.
And you would like to add it to this
And that-
policy? Okay, do we have a motion to add Zach's suggestion to policy BBAA?
Motion to add,
I think is a reflection of what the people were talking about last time. I want to go back to the policy committee for drafts. We don't have that. So it's
Okay, Carrie approves it. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, do we have a discussion?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, let's have a vote. Can we have a vote? So what
You're voting on the
yeah, thank you.
amendment
Yeah.
that
that I made?
no, that
There's two
Zach made
amendments.
through somebody, Carrie.
Here.
Carrie and Byron made a motion to amend in deference to Zach's suggestion.
Yes, but what about my amendment?
We're gonna, that's the,
Gotta go
that's
down
the
the stack,
master,
yeah.
that's the master
Okay,
vote that we'll
okay, I
get
get
back
it,
to.
I get it. Okay, let's vote on Zach's amendment first. Patty?
Nancy Claiberg.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, can you read what it is? I'm not sure exactly.
So Liz, here's what the amendment
Maybe
would
I'll-
be. This would be under. If you go to, like I'm a radio host, if you go to line 20 of this is BBA. And 20 said, oh, sorry, BBAA. Yeah, thank you. And you go to line 20 and it goes, board members may occasionally serve on committees or organizations for the purpose of reciprocal communication, reporting back to the board. The Zach's ghostwritten amendment would, through Carrie, seconded by Byron, would be, Carrie's amendment, seconded by Byron, would read after that. Board members will submit written reports to the superintendent's office for inclusion in the school board's agenda packet. For school district standing committees, city committees, and temporary slash special committees, this will include a written summary of the committee's activity and decisions. For school board standing and ad hoc committees, this will be composed of the committee's minutes with a cover page.
Okay, can we have
So-
a vote?
Can I just be clear though, Nancy? I'm sorry. I wasn't sure what this was. We haven't had discussion on it. Could I just have a brief discussion? I just,
Let's
it's
vote.
just not, it's just
Vote.
not clear. It's not clear to me that like you're looking for a report, like if for like the rec board.
Is, if you watch the minutes from the December 12th meeting, which unfortunately you were not able to attend, you will see that discussion. So we did already have a discussion, so we are gonna move the question. Patty?
Nancy Claiberg,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Lee Hudson,
Yes.
Byron Matto,
Yes.
Liz Barrett,
No.
Pip Clues, absent, Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Passes.
That's that amendment 7-1.
And
Now-
then we vote.
Now you're back to
The
Nancy's
entire-
motion to approve it with her amendment of striking those 3 words or 4 words.
No, 3 words.
Now it's already amended again.
And to remove the board approval.
To
of
remove the board approval,
committee.
right,
On line 22.
perfect.
Okay, is there any more discussion? Can we have a vote? Okay, Patty?
Lee Hudson,
Yes.
Byron Matto,
Yes.
Liz Barrett,
Liz?
Sorry, no.
Pip Clues absent, Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Carrie Nolte,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
passes.
Okay, let's move. Thank you, everyone. Margot would be happy if she were here.
Somewhere Margot is smiling.
Somewhere Margot's smiling. Okay, consideration and approval of strategic planning. I'm gonna turn this over to Zach.
So, I've got the memo. I just want to clarify, something, I think that's important. In terms of communicating out to the public, and it's not included in the memo. The plan is that we would develop a landing page similar to the superintendent's search process. So it'd be on the.
It's on there.
Oop,
It's on there.
you already created.
Put it up there. Yes.
Beautiful.
Oh, it's already on. there.
So,
Thank you,
so-
Patty.
Patty's a step ahead.
Boom, done.
So landing page, and that would include materials up to this point in the process. That have been part of everything from the development of POG. The board of graduate, down through.
Zach, I'm sorry, can you talk into the mic more? I don't know if it's pointed towards you. Thank you.
So what is not included in the memo that I submitted to the board would be just clear information about how we're communicating to the general public about the meetings of the smaller working groups. This would include a landing page on the district website, which Patty just said she already started a tab for.
It's on the district information tab.
There you go.
There.
Material that which would be built to include a description of the process from Portrait of a Graduate down through strategic planning. All the materials up to this point that have been utilized with those groups and with the board. And then it would also be a repository for the list of meeting dates and times for each of those working groups, and minutes that would come out of each of those working groups. So outside of that, the rest of the material I tried to contain inside of the memo that I sent to you.
Okay, I think Byron has a motion. Is that correct, Byron?
Yeah, I had one. I think that a lot of what, thank you, Zach, for updating us relative to the memo on changes being made to the website for communicating minutes and posting those things. I very much appreciate that. The only thing I would is with the posting of the meetings, those would include Zoom links. So these are like can be attended by the public as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. With that, then I don't have everything that I was going to be suggesting. I think has been covered from my perspective. So I appreciate that very much. I think the only thing that's on the table is an existing motion from the 9th. Yeah.
Is, do we have that motion? Do you have that motion?
Nancy,
have it.
I made that motion and I would be happy to withdraw it. I just have one other question. Would the videos also be posted so people can watch?
You were saying Zoom link, and then we can
That's-
and we can work through
I just wanted
but we
to
can work through
clarify
the
that
like archiving the actual
Right.
archiving the actual video so people will be able to have access to
I'm
those.
happy to
Yep.
withdraw the motion. I don't remember who seconded it. Was it you or I don't know who it
I
was.
think I don't remember a second, but yeah,
Okay.
I think it was.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I wrote down the motion. Do you want me to just read it? You, or do you want to read it?
Yeah, I have, my language was, I mean, just, yeah, my language was just to move the request that well, I had a couple of things to say on it, which just was that, it's important to me anyway, like the defined structure of things. So in the memo, it talked about teams and groups and it like used the words interchangeably. And why I think it's important is because it's hard to define properties and functions of a structure if things are like invariant, isn't like this is this or this is that. So I think the only thing I had put in my motion was that was just to codify these entities as strategic plan focus area teams, but really, I mean, that's of the purview of the school department, not really the board, because these are entities of that. So I think as long as we're tight on typing and then the transparency is defined in the terms of the functions and the properties of those types, I'm fully satisfied.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I read what?
Sure.
Okay, this is what Byron said, and then I added to it. The strategic plan focus area teams, which is the name that you thought would be good for it, post their meeting times with Zoom links and minutes to be taken and posted on the school board website. And what I added, I took from Zach's memo. Each of these groups will be chaired by a district administrator. Members of the Portsmouth School Board will join teams as participants and help share updates with the broader board and community so that the strategic plan can be approved by the summer of 2024. Do people like what I added? Yes, Kerry, and then what Byron got the ball rolling here, but I know he communicated with Lisa to get this ball rolling. Kerry.
I just think that that where it is a district led, or Zach, we'll just call Zach the district. It's up to him to run those groups. I think it's strange to have a board motion, if that's helpful. Sure. The one thing I would change in what you said specifically would be that Patty has already constructed this under district information. And so you specifically call it out under school board on that, in that motion. Does that make sense?
Well, except I said members of the Portsmouth School Board will join teams as participants.
Or maybe it was Byron's part that would be posted on the school board website.
Oh,
That's
under what?
It's broad. I mean, school board websites.
Just put school website.
Oh, okay, you're right.
Oh,
Yeah.
School website, okay.
But in general, I would say, my personal opinion is we don't need this, that this is more of a consensus moment of, yes, we can be consistent in terminology, but it's still led by
The administration.
the administration and the
Yeah.
school department.
Thank you.
Think you had something. I just was gonna say, I think this is a consensus moment, I hope, because it sounds like you're okay with it, so drawing all the motions.
I don't have any need for a motion. I think as it's laid out and what Jack just added just is fully acceptable to me, and I hope satisfies the board's requests previously.
Okay, Lisa.
Yeah, I don't know that we need a motion. My interest was simply in having the transparency and clarity for people. And I do think naming what we're doing in the public meeting, and they'll be in the minutes, so I think that's sufficient. I do think when we get to the committees, I just want to put a pin in that for now, but I would appreciate naming those groups. If we're not calling them school board committees and we're calling them school districts, whatever, I just think it would be good for clarity's sake to tweak that. Because it wasn't clear to me when I opened the packet, and then it was clear when you said that to me, but I think for just the purpose of future clarity, that's all.
Okay, so do we all agree that this is a consensus and we will not take? Okay. Nathan, do you need this piece of paper?
Thank you.
Whoever's doing the minutes.
But it wasn't formally.
But we're not doing anything with it.
right.
We discussed it. We
Discussion.
discussed
Part of it.
possibility of doing no, but it was never
No
proposed.
board action.
Put it right here in this folder of mine.
Motion has to be
Anything, put it up for-
As part of the discussion. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and I want to thank Lisa and Byron for initiating this. You know, we're a board that works well together, so that's a good example of two people getting together and working something out. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's go on to new business. Zach, do you want to talk about the calendar?
Yeah, we've had this in the packet for a little while and we haven't had an opportunity to get to it. You know, in the memo, I just briefly mentioned, you know, the consultation that's necessary with various folks in order to put this together. Just in terms of thinking about the broad outlines of you know, the two big sets of days that we need to hit. Under New Hampshire law, we need to be able to demonstrate that we have 180 student instructional days or the hourly equivalent thereof in our schools. And then by contract, we have our Teachers Association, we have the ability to have teachers, the way it's written is up to 187 days over the course of the school year. So the calendar you have, I believe, has 180 student days and 187 teacher days to reflect those two things. We have, different, in terms of setting the calendar, those are the two groups that we really need to target, based on state law and the collective bargaining agreement.
Any questions? Yes, Carrie.
And this connects to the email that we received
Yep.
regarding the school calendar. I just had questions around I think as a parent in the district, also the consistency and schedule is really important. And those midweek days are really challenging, or more challenging, I would say.
Yep.
So the two that kind of jump out to me, and it might be that those are when we have the trainers or the vendors or whatever, but September, we have a 3-day week, a 4-day week, a 4-day week. And then in January, we have a Monday off and a Thursday off. And that is just really difficult for routine for kids. And so I just would wonder if there's ways to modify that for trying not to have 2 back-to-back 4-day weeks and trying not to have 2 days off in the same week.
So September, September was.
September is an election
Election
day,
day.
so that's why
Oh,
that's
that's
there.
the
We can't
primary?
move that.
Got
That
it.
one
And then
was-
the January day is teacher workshop, and that really should say, and this is still a draft, but that's just high school. Because that's the day that the semesters switch over, so that's that day that they've got in between semesters. So that's a high school only workshop day.
And that was another, is there a practical reason that I don't know that we have different, I get that voting is elementary. But maybe,
That's
is
just
that part of the
general.
clarification here? Is that?
Yeah.
That's high school only?
We could do some better clarification around when things are high school only or not, but let me give you the more global conversation about middle of the week around early release time, for example, and or kind of professional development days. I've worked in places where there's two different thought processes about this. One is maintain the highest number of chunks of weeks. Actually, we had this discussion with principals.
Yeah.
And I presented these two different options and said, okay, so if we're gonna first the discussion was, we have a certain amount of contractual time where we have teachers working for us, and everyone in the APT contract, which includes teachers, guidance counselors, everyone in the professional categories. And those days, for the most part, are district coordinated and run time, right? So any of that training tends to be, we talked about it as that's Caesar's, those are Caesar's days. That we run from central office a lot of that work. But there's still a lot of stuff that needs to happen at the building level. And traditionally the early release time is given to principals for training and non-student contact time with their staffs. So there's two different models I've seen, and I've operated in two different models in another district. One was the middle of the week with the idea that you're getting people, you're gonna have the least amount of staff absences, and you're getting people in a position where we're gonna get the best quality work at that time. And then the other model is, okay, let's try to preserve as many full instructional weeks that are not broken up as possible. And that model, what I've done in some other districts is we've moved all the half days and professional development days moved to abut other broken up stuff. So if you had a vacation coming up, you'd slap the training day right before the vacation. So people, families could leave early and do that. And if you had a early release day, it would be let's think of it as Friday is the beginning of a vacation. Wednesday would be an early release half day, Thursday, a full day training session. and then we're off to vacation type of thing. But we would preserve the rest of the month someplace where those things could have been, those weeks were preserved. For consistent instructional time without things being broken up. So we talked about those two possibilities with principals. And I feel like it was reasonably consensus
Mhm.
amongst principals,
Mhm.
the desire to maintain the structure around, similar to what we have here. But I also appreciate, as a parent, I appreciate that creates some strain in terms of childcare and what's going to be available and trying to do those things. So, and we discussed that as well. So I would say anyways, that was the discussion within the administrative team.
I'm sorry, can I just clarify that? The
Yes.
discussion, the end result of the discussion was.
I want to say reasonable consensus around maintaining reflecting what that conversation looked
Okay.
like,
Mhm.
which was reasonably status quo to what has been the way in which stuff's been structured in the past. And the other element is that the location of some of this stuff too, we get an initial draft of the calendar from APT based on the collective bargaining agreement. And now this is not to say we do make some tweaks, but some of this too is also reflects the desire of the teaching staff and that opportunity that we gave away in collective bargaining to have structure it the way they would like to see it as well. Although early release time is not factored into what the calendar they give us. So,
And I'm sorry, so the January date, the January 23rd is high school only. Is there an elementary only day that complements that?
Generally, there used to be, but because we've got the election in September, that was something else we had a discussion about, where's the elementary? So we've sort of worked out that there's going to be different times for, I think the conversation was around conferences and being creative with scheduling conferences, because we've got the hiccup this year with the September election, the November election, like there's a lot more monkey wrenches in this whole
Yeah.
calendar this year. So it's just everywhere you think you've got everything ironed out. Oh, let's throw this in. Well, wait a minute. Nobody saw that coming.
Yeah.
So we've tried, and this is the best attempt to sort of ameliorate all those situations.
Thank you. And then just bigger picture question. I know we had talked before about pushing the city on the resources that the elections do put on our schools and whether there's other issues. And maybe after budget season, we can just bring that back to see if there's any board requests that can go to the city around modifying that so that to preserve those learning periods and
in regards to elections.
yes.
Yes, we were happy to engage. We've had some of those I'd say yes, like this, because we've had some of those conversations, and I think there was a very strong preference through the city clerk's office that they were not interested in a non-school approach to the way in which we conduct elections. And that puts us, and that was less of a big deal for us prior to the law shifts that allowed people to carry firearms into polling stations. So if we didn't have that, more or less, you directed me to say, roll with that. If we didn't have that, then we'd have schools open and people would be voting unless we had like a parking issue. But this is on my end is directly connected to, if we're having a day where people can enter our buildings with firearms, then we're not going to be open on those days. So.
Thank you, Carrie. Lisa.
So I, as a parent, would say for sure, like, this has been a rough week. So I think you guys all know that. I do know just from talking to people about this in the past, that there was a couple of pieces that have been a concern in some of the buildings. And one was that if we move the date, even though as a parent, I'd love to say the early release is on Friday. There was concern about learning continuity. So if kids are out of the building for too many consecutive days in a row, that's a problem for struggling learners.
Yep.
And kids who have food insecurity, that's a struggle for that piece. So I think at least, I may not have like a representative sample, but those are two things that have been brought up before.
Yeah.
I don't know how you balance that. It's tough, but I think that's a piece of it. I ask this every year, I feel like, but I'd love the communication on the calendar to be a lot bigger. Like,
Mhm.
I didn't quite grasp that middle school was in session on Thursday when the high school is closed, and that may be on me, but it was from
Yep,
asking
yep.
other people what's going on this week.
Okay.
And this was a weird one because it changed with the snow day.
Yep.
And I would
Yep.
love to think again about whether we could really get those high school half days for exams on the calendar. I understand they may move,
Yes.
but not having them there at
I think
all
that's
is
very-
deeply puzzling for families.
I think that's very fair.
Um,
I would say
and
when.
they did move this year, so that was a.
No,
perfect
they
example,
did,
but-
but no, I think that's a totally fair thing, and I think it is something that should be much clearer and available on a, inaccessible in a really easy way for families. I would say, you know, I run the joint, and we were scrambling a little bit to make sure.
Since
we
you
knew.
run the joint,
So,
one other
yeah.
request would be to have those half-day exam days not fall on major religious holidays,
Yes,
because that has happened
Yep.
in recent years a couple times.
no, that's good too.
Thank you, Lisa. Liz?
Yes, I'm a little disappointed to see that the request to have families send children back on the second and third for Thursday and Friday, when this could have been a year that we had 2 weeks vacation. I think a lot of families had looked at the calendar ahead of time and thought that maybe we'd finally get a year that we'd have 2 weeks vacation. I don't understand why we have children come back on the second anyways after spending the first, the day of the first having been up all night and having their sleep schedules all screwed up. And then we're going to ask them to come in after being hopped up on candy in the holidays and being out with family and friends up all night on the first. Then we're going to ask them to come in for a Thursday and a Friday. I think it really throws a wrench into family time that people have, travel plans and whatnot. So I do think that what's going to happen is we're going to see a lot of kids probably not coming to school those days as their families choose to have those days off. So I would instead request that the school reconsider those 2 days and maybe tack them on to the end of the year. The reason why I say that is that right now I'm seeing that the end of the year is ending on the 17th, which is a Tuesday. I know we generally have ended on the 17th. I think we ended on the 17th this year and last year. And then obviously, you factor in potential snow days. But the reason why I say that is because with smaller children, not being able to leave them home and needing to get childcare, summer camps and camps don't start until that next week. So then we're asking families to take 3 days off of work to be able to stay home with their children before summer camps start that next week. I don't know of any summer camp that has started for those end days of the week. So you're either going to have children at home by themselves with no care, or concerns of childcare for that week for working families. So it would be better, I think, to be able to end school on a Thursday if you want to have that Friday teacher workshop day or whatnot. But I would really ask the school district to reconsider that Thursday, Friday, January 2nd and January 3rd as school days, and reconsider the end date of school, so that we could end on a Thursday instead of a Tuesday, and then putting kids in a bind. I also agree with the fact that these days off on Tuesdays, although necessary for primary, they do throw a wrench into things, especially when we're talking about January, that teacher workshop. But obviously if that's just for the high school, then that kind of negates that issue there. With that said too, I know that we have like last year, we have this other page of other recognized 2024-25 holidays. I would ask again that Halloween be put on this schedule. I know I was cut off last year before I could make the comments that I wanted to make, but the comments that I wanted to make were that Portsmouth recognizes Halloween. We have a Halloween parade. We have Halloween parades in the schools for students to wear costumes. For somebody coming from other countries, Halloween is celebrated in other countries as well. It's the Day of the Dead. You celebrate the dead, just like Dia de los Muertos. I don't see that on there. Obviously, we're listing off a bunch of holidays. I'm not comparing Halloween to Ramadan, but I'm comparing Halloween to New Year's Day or President's Day or some other holidays. And Portsmouth highly celebrates Halloween. And so therefore I'd ask that Halloween be put on there as well as Dia de los Muertos. I know in my son's classroom and other classrooms, Dia de los Muertos has been celebrated where children have remembered their dead in the family. So I think that's a holiday that's missing as well. So I know we can't hit every holiday, but in respect for what Portsmouth does and what we're doing in the classroom actively, I would ask that Halloween and Dia de los Muertos be put on there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Any other comments? We all set to move on?
So I just
Tish?
have one comment that if we make January 2nd and 3rd part of the, make it a 2-week vacation, tack it on till the end of June. My only concern with that is, what if we have snow days? Then we're looking at going into the following week, potentially when all these summer camps start, and then parents are having to pull kids from school because they paid for the summer camps. It's kind of a sticky wicket right there.
Good point. Thank you, Tish.
I have
Okay.
a brief response, Nancy, to that.
Hurry up, please.
The brief response is that we've already been in a position now where we are able to do remote days instead of snow days. So I don't see that being an issue. This year's calendar, and I believe last year's calendar and calendars before have ended on Thursdays. So I don't see that being an issue to tack those on. And if we can't tack those on there, I would ask that some of these other workshop days or early release days be considered, or you move the teacher workshop days to the 2nd and the 3rd and have teachers come in. But I think that teachers might want that 2 weeks off too. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Okay. Oh,
Yeah, I
Nathan.
just had a little comment on the whole 2-week break thing. I think that as a student, like, the summer break's always great, but you have to come back eventually. And I would prefer coming back on a Thursday more than a Monday. I mean, Mondays are pretty gloomy. But I mean, I don't see a big deal in it. If students are traveling, they'll make the work up. But I don't think that we should make those vacation days, because that to me is way too far into June for students. So I say we just keep it as that.
Thank you, Nathan. Okay, let's move on. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. I noticed Zach was
Question?
taking a lot of notes here, so yes.
People want to know when the final calendar is coming.
I mean, my hope was it was,
Are we able to vote
it
on
was
it?
January, like I was hoping that we were doing a second vote post meeting. I mean, my hope would be I bring it back to you next time, but I think I'm not, I guess one of the challenges right now is we just talked about a lot of different things. And I'm not sure what exactly I would bring back to you at the moment. There were mixed reactions to extending out 2 additional days. There was different conversations about the location of teacher workshop, professional development time. So I'm not totally clear about if there's a consensus will of the board around what work you'd want me to bring back at the moment.
Well, if
So-
we had a motion to approve the calendar and then anyone was going to make any amendments to it, then you'd have to discuss it with the teachers union and circle back, but that would keep the process moving.
Yep.
Is that what we're?
Yeah,
I'll-
would be-
I'll make that motion.
Maybe we should approve it as is tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a second to Lisa's motion that we approve this calendar? Lee, second?
Just a question.
Yes.
So this was noted as a report, but this is up to the superintendent. Does it need a board vote?
Yeah.
Originally has been approved. by the
You
board.
I-
No, that's a good question.
you know,
I've that as she said
but I don't know, I think I would like.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
So.
that. Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, Nancy, I do.
Yeah.
We would need to amend the agenda to have this as a motion, but needless to say, I would like to amend I would add an amendment to add January 2nd and January 3rd as no school days, and require the superintendent to figure out how they would make those days up, whether it would be on the front end. You know, I haven't mentioned, but I always mention every year, I'd like to see school start on a Monday so that families aren't having to take Monday off with their children and then take off Tuesday morning to see their kids off on the first day of school. So it'd be nice to have school start on a Monday, but you know, I don't know that I'm comfortable telling you where to put those 2 extra days, but so I'd like to make a motion to have the winter break be 2 weeks and have January 2nd and January 3rd be no school days.
We have a second. Okay, we have no second, the motion dies. Do we have a motion to accept the calendar as presented
We
by
are.
Zach?
You have
Yeah,
one
second.
second, Lee.
Okay, yes, Lee was the second. Okay,
Any-
any discussion on that? Roll call vote, please.
Byron Matto.
Yes.
Liz Barrett.
No,
Kip Clues absent. Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Lee Hudson.
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
We have a calendar. I was gonna answer.
Look at us.
I was gonna ask we eliminate.
Cart course, hold it.
1 year, we discussed eliminating April vacation and February vacation and making 1 week in March.
That was popular around New England.
That's
Yeah.
the Connecticut.
And then it
that's how I
popped-
grew up.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
drip up from down
Didn't
south.
go well, did it?
And then that goes away, because then people start
I think
talking
the kids
ski.
went off with
Yeah, right.
I'd be okay.
Nancy, can I make a motion to add Halloween and Dia de los Muertos to the other recognized holidays?
We already voted on the calendar.
That's not the calendar though, Nancy. That's the second page.
Okay, you want to make that a motion?
Yes, please. I'll make a motion to add Halloween to the other recognized holidays.
Okay, we have a first, we have a second. Any discussion? Roll
Yes,
call.
I mean, I'd like to discuss and again and just renew what I had said before, that Halloween is a highly celebrated holiday in Portsmouth. The schools also celebrate in some classrooms Dia de los Muertos. It is a celebration of the dead. If you Google Halloween, it is a holiday that's celebrated across the world. And it celebrates the dead and or All Saints Eve, All Hallows Eve. Obviously children dress up and we have a big celebration around it. Portsmouth has a huge Halloween parade, and I think folks that are coming from other areas of the world need to understand Halloween's importance in Portsmouth because it is important. Thank you.
Discussion, Nathan.
I guess just if we're gonna add those 2 things, why wouldn't we be putting other holidays on it? Like Hanukkah or like just why wouldn't be adding more? I don't want to be like making this bigger than it needs to be, but just why wouldn't we add?
I think it's on.
Hanukkah is on there. It's the second page of the, I don't know if you have the packet in front of you.
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
been
I'm sorry. I'm
recognized
sorry.
hol-
December 25th,
It's
January 6th.
Already relatively exhaustive. I
Alright.
think it, yeah.
I'm forget that I just said that.
That's Ted.
So my question is, how were these recognized holidays chosen?
So this is, we have done some work around being a more equitable school district. Excuse me, one of the partners we've worked with has been New Hampshire Listens. New Hampshire Listens.
Ooh, be careful.
Spirit moves.
Down one, two. Is,
Do I need to go respond?
phone about New Hampshire primary. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's like the Council of Presidents, Tish, is listed down in the bottom, and I know that Zach, like just picking up where Zach left off, that there just wanted to be a general awareness for teachers and other folks in the community of holidays that students may celebrate in case they might be out of the classroom or, you know, maybe bringing that to the classroom and sort of being all inclusive too. Zach, all right, here he comes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right,
The nurse went out
The
to
nurse
save
went
you.
out to check on you.
all right.
One night she picked me up off the
Okay.
ground.
So that is not commentary on New Hampshire listens. So, so they also have done a lot of work with, Oyster River, School District. This document was something that Oyster River actually uses with their calendar, and I really liked it. So it was lifted, and it was very honest about that. Last year, the Council of Presidents is from Washington State, and it's post-secondary institutions in Washington State, and they had established this list, and Oyster River had borrowed that from them. So, thank you.
Okay,
Anyway, so that's the backstory
Okay.
on where it came from.
we have a motion to add those two holidays. Can we have a roll call vote, please, if there's no more discussion?
Liz Barrett,
Yes.
Dick Clues absent, Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Carrie Nolte,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Lee Hudson,
Yes.
Byron Matto.
Yeah.
Passes.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a consideration and approval of lead remediation grant. And we have a motion. Move to authorize the school department to make application for accept funding from and enter into a grant agreement with the state of New Hampshire for the lead mediation grant program. Do we have a motion to
Motion.
approve that?
Second.
Terry, second, Byron, any discussion?
Move the question to a vote.
Yeah, Nathan, did you want to say anything?
Only that we got we finally got the invite yesterday, about 5:30, 4:35 o'clock. It clarifies we have to have this in the minutes and deliver the minutes to them. It also is a reimbursement of costs. So Kenny's continuing to work diligently. Zach said earlier, it's only on those that qualify or are eligible in the 5 parts per billion or more. And it's 100% reimbursement of those.
Hmm.
That particular grant does not cover all the testing we're doing, which is not cheap. But Kenny believes that there is another DES opportunity. We'll chase for that. So we'll get this application in as quickly as we can. It is first come, first served, and it's $1 million. It says applications will be accepted on a rolling basis, which sounds like sooner the better. So
Yeah.
we'll pursue this with all urgency.
Get the money.
Okay. Any other discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Lee Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Matto.
Yes.
Liz Barrett.
Yes.
Dick Clues absent. Passes.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, the next item on the agenda is consideration and approval of 2 new committees, the Finance Committee and the Teacher and Learning Committee. Did everyone have a chance to look at the description of these 2 committees? Do we have a motion to approve both of these committees and then we'll have discussion? Motion?
So moved.
Brian, second, Lisa. Okay, any discussion on these 2 committees? These were requests made by Nathan and Zach. Yes, Carrie.
As we've gone through different committees and things like that, I do love the idea of having board committees really fall in line with the purview of the board, meaning like finance and budget, superintendent evaluation. And so I think that both of these make a lot of sense to me. I was just curious, to maybe hear a bit from Patty around the teaching and learning, just because I want to make sure that the board role in curriculum and policy is clarified.
Absolutely. So it describes what the committee would be doing, which is basically to learn about what's happening in the district as far as new curriculum, new programs, different activities that might be going on in the district, pilots of new programs. We've got a math pilot going on, for example, just to give more information about what's going on, because the votes that happen at board meetings about budget directly impact purchasing of the materials to pilot purchasing materials. When pilot programs are then turned into, these are going to be standing sort of materials that are going to be used. And then just looking at standardized test results, we had a quick sort of overview of that last year, but getting a little bit more information, maybe learning how to use things like iPlatform, iReport, different things like that, so that the teaching and learning aspect, which is really what the schools are all about, is really highlighted and brought to bear.
Thank you.
Did you want?
I was just gonna say broadly, I mean, in addition to these two, the revitalization of facilities, the idea is to really create kind of onboard experts around these areas that will then contribute in a meaningful way to conversations. It allows a depth of contact with people who are in these particular arenas for board members to ask a lot of questions you might not be able to in a normal board session. And I think it'd be really productive for folks to then be able to bring that back and contribute to the board as a whole. I think one of the things we've been working on is collectively is around transparency and depth of understanding about what we do. And I think, that's, you can't always facilitate all of that at the committee of the whole. Sometimes you need to have some smaller groups to do some of that work. And the intent of these two policy continuing to go strong, and then the revitalization of facilities is to do exactly that work.
Okay, any more discussion? Lisa?
Just a quick question, probably also, well, actually for both of them, I think it would be helpful once they meet to maybe bring back to the board sort of what is the specific kind of mission and goals, like once the committees are convened, just to kind of have a little bit more clarity, just so people's expectations are in line with what the committees are actually doing, which is more of a suggestion. But a lot of school boards around the state and many other states, honestly, have standing committees for finance and curriculum. So I think that this makes sense.
Good suggestion. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, can we vote?
Carrie Nolte,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Lee Hudson,
Stuff now.
okay, Byron Matto,
Yes.
Liz Barrett,
Yes.
who's absent, Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Okay, vote passes. Thank
Yes.
you, everyone. The next item is committee assignments. I think everybody has the list in front of them. Brian already attended a library committee meeting. Liz is going to attend the rec board meeting on Thursday night. I've notified everyone, like for instance, the mayor. She has the Blue Ribbon Committee for Sustainable Practices, so I've notified him that Lee Hudson is the representative from the school board. I don't know if I have to do, Brian, the Safe Water Advisory, I don't have the emails. Do you have? Well,
We can help facilitate that.
okay, all right, if you could let them know that Liz Barrett is the representative on that committee. I think everyone else, it's all school.
I'm already on swag, Nancy.
Oh, you already are, so they know you, okay. Christine Burke for wellness, can you? let her know
I'm
that
good.
Kerry-
I'm already on it.
Oh, you're on it, okay. I know that Tish notified.
Jenny, yep,
Tish-
her and I have
okay.
exchanged emails, so
Okay,
I'm good
and-
there.
I think, is everybody else all set? Is she looked down the? list?
Yeah, I think it's just the new committees. Do you want interest for that?
No, we already made appointments to that, to finance and teaching and learning. We already made appointments to that.
Oh.
Okay,
Look it down at the
uh,
very bottom.
Brian and I talked about that when we got together,
it.
so we have that. And then, the strategic planning, Zach, you'll tell us when those meetings happen, correct? Okay,
There'll be, just for people who are part of that,
yeah,
those things, there will be a coming up soon. We were unrealistic. We were hoping to do it like tomorrow. But there'll be a meeting to convene the members of the three groups together to talk about the next couple of steps. And then groups will go off, strategic focus area teams. Will then move off and start their work, but there'll be a meeting to convene folks first to discuss the process for those groups.
okay, thank you. We have a policy committee meeting on Friday morning. Lisa has already organized a legislative committee meeting. That's gonna be February 2nd. February 1st, I'm sorry. Is it February?
I think we're not clear yet if the policy committee is going to happen on Friday. I'm just going to say.
Oh,
So,
well, I think you and I will talk.
Yeah.
Okay, redistricting committee, Zach, you're gonna schedule that one,
Yep.
correct? I think, did I go through all of them? What is the legislative committee?
It is 4 p.m. We totally did this, Nancy.
I know.
And now you're asking me, I'm like, where do we?
Wait a minute. I just
I
wanna
sent the
check my-
notice to Paulette. Now I have to search my
It's
inbox.
the first.
It's the first at 4 p.m.
Okay,
exact
I'm
conference room.
sorry.
I had that. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That was
sorry.
My error.
No, we just nailed it down today. And NHSBA is gonna be at that meeting.
Yeah.
We'll take care of the Zoom link with them.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry. That was my mistake. I have it on my calendar correctly. Okay, so we're all set with this.
Question, Nancy?
Yeah.
I just want to follow up to what Zach's amended bit was for the policy that we just voted on. That requires folks to bring forward. It was a report, and then certain ones were minutes. So I guess I'm just wondering, can we just supply the minutes of these meetings versus having to write out a report? Like, what is the board looking for? If the board is looking for a written report versus minutes, because I think that's cumbersome and we don't really have any guidance as to what type of written report you want. So I would prefer that all committees provide their minutes to the board and then therefore go that route. But I don't know. I mean, I don't understand, maybe some wouldn't have minutes. I don't know. What is your thought process there, Zach?
So my intent in the amendment, and I can't speak to the will of the board, my intent in the amendment was that under our own rule, so we can control our own committees. We, school board, well, the royal we, can control our own, the school board can control its own committees. And under your own rules, you require the posting of times of when those committees are going to meet. And this is school board committees, this is not district committees, which is different. But and that minutes are taken. So since you're already requiring members who participate in those meetings to create minutes, then for those sets of meetings, which are ad hoc committees and standing committees of the board, then the amended language was that minutes and a cover page doesn't have to be, I assume it would be like, here are the minutes of the last blah, blah, blah meeting, would be provided to the board to include in the packet. In the groups that may or may not have minutes, because we do not govern what they do, the language was a summary of what had happened would occur. I can't speak to the will of the board. I remember the discussion was like a paragraph or two would cover it. So if you did a quickie memo, and we can provide a suggested template out of my office. But again, that's not the will of the board, but I would imagine a paragraph or two. It's like, well, I went to meet with the library committee. We met on such and such a date. The topics of discussion were blankety blank blank. And the decisions that were made were XYZ, and we'll meet again on blah, blah, blah. Done. It goes in the packet. Your fellow board members are informed. There's reciprocal communication between the board and those other committees of the city.
I think
Okay. So just to clarify though, because you just said school board.
for a second, please. I think the last 2 years that our board met, members did not give committee updates, correct? We would ask for committee updates and no board member would offer any information. So I think what we're trying to do. We
It's
serve.
Carrie and I are always updated about the futures committees. So we're on. So I don't think it's fair to say that nobody did.
This is an effort to inform the board of various committee meetings that we all go to. So if we could provide a note, minutes, whatever to Paulette, and she'll put it in our packet, we will be informed of what our board members are doing. Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, I think I brought this up at some point in December, November,
Right.
and it's not the intention to have it be like an 8-page book report. Right. It was really, what were the topics? Were there votes? When is the next meeting? Are there any decision points or discussions that we might want to have as a board because they impact schools? And Paulette has a template already for meeting notes, so it's pretty easy to fill in. So I don't think it needs to be like this burdensome clerical thing, but my thought was it could also maybe go in the consent agenda. So we don't have to,
Oh,
well, no, if people
Yeah.
are just providing these written minutes, then we don't need to spend time
well, that's a good
at the end
idea.
of the meeting,
Okay.
just like talking about it.
I would agree.
I
The
like
acceptance
that.
of reports. It'd
Right.
Just be a consent agenda.
Like it's like a shorter superintendent's memo, just
Okay.
quick.
Okay, so as soon as you attend a meeting, if you could get that information to Paulette, that would be advisable, I think. Carrie.
I agree with having it in the consent agenda, and just a brief thing. I think it helps us to keep on all of the board members' radar, like, oh, Liz is on rec and I have a concern that I want her to bring to rec or something like that. So I think that's helpful. And then it's separate but very related. So in September, the prior board had gotten a invitation to attend the Greater Portsmouth Youth Wellness Coalition, which is more of a regional coalition. And I've been attending that meeting because it's very in line with my work and substance use and things like that. And so I have told them I am a board member, but I'm not serving in this role. But the recent minutes of their meeting reflected that I recommended that they propose policy changes to the school board. So I thought I should just disclose that to the board, but also to see if like, I don't know what the process would be for me to request of the board, if what my role is, or clarify that. So if we can just think about, like, I don't know how many of these things got on here years ago, right? But is that something that I can ask the board? May I serve in this group?
Byron, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, it doesn't sound like you're serving as any sort of representative of the Portsmouth School Board, right? So it's sort of on your own accord.
Yeah, I think it's just getting a little muddy because their plans or policy.
Right, so then
Changes.
I guess I assume as a school board member, you would like bring them to policy.
Okay,
I agree with
okay.
that. I was gonna say that as a matter of fact. Anything that you think should be brought to the policy committee, any member can bring something that they think should be discussed.
Okay, thank you.
Policy committee, or like you said, the rec board or whatever.
Apologies for the divergent
No, that's okay.
topic.
That's
Thank
okay.
you for the clarification.
Thank you, Byron.
Okay,
Nancy, sorry, I just had a follow-up. I'd have a preference for just doing the meeting minutes. Like if I'm going to the rec board, I don't want to reinvent the wheel, talk about what was voted on, da 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 da. I'd rather just send in approved minutes, but the issue you're gonna run into is that the rec board's not gonna approve its minutes until the next meeting. So, you know, I don't know. I just don't want to reinvent the wheel or have to rewrite minutes that maybe don't get approved or worry about something misrepresented. So that's where my caution comes in there and my concern.
I would say if you could provide the board with a brief summary, that would be helpful so that we don't have to wait a whole nother month. But if it's up to you, whatever you're the most comfortable with.
Although you
go ahead.
did just pass policy
Right,
about what the expectation is.
right.
So you would
So-
have to go back and change policy
Okay.
if you.
Yeah, Liz, if you could get it to us as soon as possible, just a brief summary. So that we don't have to prolong the process and wait until the rec board issues minutes.
with that said, if it's just noted on those minutes that it's not approved yet, wouldn't that be sufficient?
Right. Yes, that would be.
So I would imagine if, I'm just trying to look real quickly, so if you're on a city. Super quick, you give a non-rec board example.
Like Brian went to library last Wednesday night, so it would be
Big-
nice to have the summary in our next
And if
meeting
they're,
agenda, or, summary in the meeting packet that we get.
So may I just offer up
Yes.
that to the extent that 91A applies to any of these groups, many of these groups, 91A probably applies to the rec board and it probably applies to the library trustees as well. They have minutes, they're unapproved minutes. If you
within
ask,
72 hours.
if you ask some, within 72 hours, if you ask whomever is keeping the minutes for that group, they should reasonably provide it to anybody in the public, so it's reasonably provided to you, and you can then share with the board, unapproved, because it hasn't been revisited. And if you instead want to just use that to summarize from, you could do that, but I hear what Liz is saying, and I would suggest don't reinvent the wheel to the extent that you don't have to, because they have to have that within 72 hours. We do, and so do they. So that may not be the case for every small group out there you're affiliated with, but the overwhelming majority in the city are being compelled to do just that.
Okay, thank you. Carrie.
I would just say though, that I think the goal of a 2 or 3 sentence update is to really hone in on what's important to the board. So if rec is going to be building a new structure right next to one of our schools, that is something that's good to know about. Whereas the bulk of the library meeting may be of no interest to the school board. So I guess I worry about reposting things that belong in another place in our agendas, and I would prefer that it's a brief, succinct summary in the consent agenda that we can review and just more an FYI.
Thank you, Carrie. I think that's a good way to summarize it. Okay. Let's move on to future agenda requests. If you have any requests, please let Brian and myself know, and we'll discuss them at our agenda meetings with Zach and Patty. And Nathan comes in. Okay, we have to reopen the public comment. Do we have anyone? There's no one here
Before we
present.
do that, I had a question for future.
Oh, sure.
So for the next budget hearings, who have we got on tap? And I did reach out to you around sort of questions about mental health, which I don't know if other people on the board are interested in that or not, but I was thinking back to when our students presented the youth behavior risk survey data, and we're talking about how it was like more than half of them didn't feel like they would disclose or had anybody to talk to when they were in crisis. And that was, to me, really concerning. I don't know that we can solve that with, you know, the constraints of the budget right now, but that was an area where I'm curious if there are budget needs, but I don't know that everybody else feels that way, but I just want to put that out there.
We have a topic for the next budget meeting, correct?
So here's what I've got, and then I had a TBD, and I was gonna acknowledge there was a request for a mental health focus, but there hadn't been. I was leaving it to you guys to figure out what you're gonna do. So we meet again on January 30th. We have a budget workshop on January 30th. That will, right now, we're working on the materials for this different ways to look at resource equity across buildings. We may, or we're definitely gonna circle back. We had the request, we had the request around para utilization stuff. It may be ready for the 30th, it may not be ready for the next. But we will eventually come back to that to make sure we cover that too. But the budget workshop itself is around resource equity. And then February 6th is another budget workshop, which I had as a TBD right now, with knowing that your request was in when I was waiting for direction from leadership. And then February 13th, we have a regular scheduled board meeting with our second public hearing. Tonight was the first one with, we didn't have a lot of public input yet. And then Nathan, that is a possible night to adopt the budget. And if not, then February 20th would be a budget workshop, which would then be adoption night on our current schedule.
Paras, I wasn't trying to have a second special ed budget hearing. I was just curious. I mean, if that's an email, that's fine.
Okay.
Like,
That's great. Good for us to know. We were trying to figure out what the best way to bring that back was.
Thank you, Lisa. Liz?
I just had a public comment. Oh, is public comment open now?
Under our rules, board members are not supposed to participate in public comment.
Under the rules, the board members can participate in public comment, and then if they have to abstain from voting on anything. Honestly, it's just an announcement, Nancy. I missed the announcements in the beginning.
Okay, go ahead.
The 5th grade band is having their first concert tomorrow, so all the 5th graders are coming to the middle school at 4 o'clock right after school. They're being bussed over and they're having their first ever band concert. So my son will be playing, and I'm sure it'll sound great. But I'm happy for them, and I look forward to seeing a new round of band students coming into our schools.
Has he been practicing at home?
I'll plead the 5th on that one for him.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Okay, reopen public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment? I don't believe so, and we will close the public comment session. Do we have, the only thing I wanted to say, new members, are you on the New Hampshire School Boards Association? Do you get the emails from New Hampshire? Okay, I just wanted to double check on that. Yes.
The other thing was that we had, I don't know if it was Paulette or Patty, sign us up for all the school. Like I get the Dondero newsletter, and are you?
They're
yeah,
on
okay.
that.
I
Yes.
tried to update it.
Okay.
That should have been
Yeah.
updated, yeah.
To be getting everything.
And everybody, you're all getting it.
Yeah.
Nancy, I haven't gotten the New Hampshire School Board email stuff, so I don't know if our SAU emails can go into that. But I haven't been getting anything from New Hampshire School Board Association.
Does go into the SAU. No,
I
mine.
haven't gotten anything.
Oh, okay.
We'll,
I don't know if I can sign myself up or, I mean, think like I've signed myself up for webinars on their website, but I've never gotten emails from them.
let me see what we can do tomorrow, see if that's a quick fix we can take care of for you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, our next meeting is, or our next budget meeting is a week from tonight.
30th.
Do we know where it is? Is it in here or
Yeah,
the school
yeah,
board
it's in the
conference?
school board
Conference room. Well, Paulette will be sending us an agenda
She will.
anyway.
Yep.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second.
Byron, second. Tish, all in favor? Do we need a roll call for that?
Adjourn. Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiborne.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Hell, yes.
Lee Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
What did you say?
Byron Maddow. Liz Barrett.
Yes.
Who's absent? Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Terry Nolte.
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Scott, for making it.
I appreciate the,
Thanks for having me.
I like the cooperation that we're all